Welcome, everybody, to another segment of Lewis at Large. Yours truly, Warner Lewis from the Flight Deck. And as always, that means some smart talk radios in your future. In this segment, we are extremely pleased to have Lea Berman and Jeremy Bernard with us. Who's Lea Berman? Who's Jeremy Bernard? Lea served as White House Social Secretary and Special Assistant to the President from 2004 to 2007. Was also Chief of Staff to Second Lady Lynn Cheney from 2002 to 2003, and previously was Social Secretary to the Vice President. She's also the creator of the blog America's Table, and she lives in our nation's capital. Jeremy served as White House Social Secretary and Special Assistant to the President from 2011 to 2015. Previously, he was Senior Advisor to the United States Ambassador in France and to the White House Liaison to the National Endowment for the Humanities. He's the founder and president of JMB Global Ltd., a strategic consulting firm, and lives in the City of Angels in Los Angeles. We are extremely pleased to have them here. We'll be talking about brand new work that they have penned together called Treating People Well. Jeremy, Lea, how are you, my friends?
We're great.
Doing
Thanks
great.
for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Well, we are very, very pleased to have you here and look forward to this, quite frankly. And let's do this. Let's give a little bit more setup. Lea, I'll start with you first. What took you, what line of work, what desire, what path did you take to become a White House Social Secretary?
You know, there isn't really one set path. We've all come to it in generally different ways, but I had been an event planner and a fundraiser, and then I was a full-time mom for 10 years when a friend came to me and said, Mrs. Cheney is looking for a social secretary, and you give a lot of good parties, and the vice president's residence is right around the corner from your daughter's school, so maybe you should go interview. And so I did, and that was how I became a staffer for the Cheneys. And then I really thought after the 2004 re-election that I was done with that, and Mrs. Bush asked me to come work as the White House Social Secretary.
So you give really good parties. People need to put that on their resume. Is that right? Party giver?
Well, I think, you know, there are so many truly great professional event planners now.
Yeah.
And those are the kinds of people, if they have political interests and experience, who are drawn to something like a White House Social Secretary job.
Indeed. Jeremy, what about you? Same question.
I had gotten to know the Obamas during the campaign, so I had the benefit of knowing them before they were in the White House, which I think helps in comfort level mostly. But I was working in Paris, and I got an email from the First Lady's Chief of Staff asking if I'd throw my hat in the ring for this job. And I thought, well, I don't know anything about that job. How am I going to do that? And when I interviewed I went to Washington, and I met with all these people in the West Wing, and then I went and met with Mrs. Obama, and the first thing I said was, you know, I just want to make something clear because I'm not certain that I'm the right person. I really don't know how to arrange flowers that well, and I don't know China patterns. And she said, yeah, she's like, you'll have people that will do that and will help you with that. I need someone with good judgment, good political instincts, and that knows how to get more and more people into the White House that have never been. And much to my surprise, I was picked, but it was surreal, obviously.
You know, we certainly want to talk about the book, especially in this day and age. What a wonderful title, Treating People Well, regardless of what your background is, and the subtitle is The Extraordinary Power of Civility at Work and in Life. But before we get there, I'd like to hear both of your takes on this. And I know you all were Lea, not so much maybe, but Jeremy, you were certainly connected with government service. When you all walked into the White House for the first time in your official capacity, or you went in even to interview, what was that feeling like to think it's possible I might work in the nation's most hallowed address?
Well, it's deeply intimidating.
Oh, sorry.
I mean, I remember going to see Mrs. Bush and being very, very nervous and being escorted up to the family residence. And she looked at me and welcomed me and said, oh, I have that same suit, the suit that I was wearing. And it immediately helped me to feel at ease, like we had something in common. And it was one of many, many things I came to learn from her about how to put people at ease. Jeremy and I, in writing this book, always joke about how we don't know how either of us ever got to the place that we had these interviews, and it's just one of those rare moments and opportunities in life that you have to roll with.
Every time I walked in, including the time for the interview, it was a feeling of, is this really me, and when are they going to find out that
you don't know how to arrange flowers?
I don't belong. I once said to my staff when I first got there and people had been there for a couple of years, I said, if that feeling of every time you walk in the gate, you're thankful and wondering how you got here, if that's not there, then it might be time to look into doing something else, because it takes so much. It's so much time, so much energy. It's such an honor, and it is a thrill, but it's a lot of work. And I don't think there was ever a time I didn't come in. And sometimes it'd be raining outside. You couldn't wait to get in. You had to go through the Secret Service. But it was always a feeling of pride to walk in and know that was your place of work.
Well, again, if you just joined us, yours truly, Warner Lewis from the flight deck of Lewis at Large Radio. Special guest this segment, Lea Berman and Jeremy Bernard, both social secretaries at the White House. Lea under the Bush administration, Jeremy for President Obama. They have penned an extraordinary new work called Treating People Well, the Extraordinary Power of Civility in Work and in Life. Next question after this one, we're going to dive into the book, but I would like both of yours take. Lea, you work for President Bush and the Second Lady, Lynn Cheney. Jeremy, you were in the Obama White House. Are you thinking, gee, I miss it, or you couldn't pay me enough to be a social secretary in the Trump White House?
Well, you always miss the White House after you leave. It's like a very favorite school. It's your alma mater, and you feel a great sense of connection to it. But I have always considered government service something that you do for a short period of your life, and then you go and do something else, because that was what I was taught that the Founding Fathers believed, and it makes sense to me because it's very hard work, and it's not something that I could imagine doing for a whole career. I mean, the average length of service of a White House staffer in the Bush administration was 18 months. So being there term after term would be probably difficult and also not so healthy.
I must say that I have such fond memories, and like so many things in life, you sometimes romance a little more than it might have been how great it was. You remember all these amazing events and tend to put out of your mind that when you were exhausted and you didn't feel like you had enough people and were overwhelmed. But overall, I think back on it with such fond memories. I was in the White House for 4.5 years. I served in the Obama administration for 6.5 years. I never thought I was going to go into government work, so this was kind of a surprise for me, and it was great, but I can't tell you that there's ever a time I say I wish I was there.
And again, I want to put politics aside, but I do want to talk about them as people. Lea, again, around President Bush, around Lynn Cheney, and around that group, and Jeremy around President Obama, and around the group that you were with. Contrast that to if you were suddenly part of today's White House. What is a greater challenge with the personality of a Donald Trump? What is positive about that, and what is potentially going to be a greater challenge?
Well, I think it's always a challenge to have someone in the White House who hasn't had enough political experience to smooth off the rough edges that we have become used to our politicians having. I do think that our book is about many of the things we learned working for the Bushes and the Obamas. I found that both President and Mrs. Bush really bent over backwards to make people feel welcome, and they wanted to bring many different kinds of people to the White House. And it's very moving to see people come for the first time and walk in and look around and realize that as Americans, they have this common heritage with all of the families who lived there before. Very emotional, and they were cognizant of that, and they made every effort that every guest had a wonderful once-in-a-lifetime memory.
I think both of us feel very lucky to have served under the presidents and first ladies that we served under. They both, with very different politics, really were great at making you feel comfortable and making you feel welcomed and genuinely being good people. You might disagree with the politics, but as far as what it was like for us, I would talk to Lea often during my tenure, but the one thing that was really clear is we both felt like we were lucky to work for such great people, and it's not knocking someone else. That's what we know is the ones we've worked for. But I think we're both really honored at that. And obviously, it's very different now. I can't imagine what it's like, and I don't want to judge into it, but it is a different atmosphere.
Well, I can imagine. Well, listen, I appreciate the perspective so far. Let's talk about treating people well. First of all, again, I would assume there's a little bit of a fraternal system to those that are in politics and those that have been president and past social secretaries within the White House. But Lee, how did you and Jeremy, how did you guys connect with one another?
Well, we met because the outgoing social secretary always throws a luncheon and a welcome for the incoming. And the social secretaries maintain really strong friendships and ties. And in fact, we get together a couple of times a year, and the dean of that corps right now is Bess Abel, who worked for Lyndon Johnson. And so these women are great for giving us perspective as we're coming into the job and explaining about things that had gone terribly wrong and how they'd fixed them, or mistakes that had been narrowly averted, and lots of funny stories. And it's kind of an informal sorority in Jeremy. And they're a support system for us, and they don't care about politics. They just want everything at the White House to work well, so we help each other.
And Lee and I immediately bonded a friendship. After that, shortly after that initial luncheon with all the social secretaries, Lee invited me, hosted a luncheon for me at her home, and it was a very mixed group of people, Democrats, Republicans, all in all different jobs. It was so much fun, and I would never have guessed that I would have so much fun at a lunch that I would have thought would have been this, more stuff. It was fun, and we bonded a really good friendship over the years. And I called when something was going wrong, and it kind of helped to hear her say, "Oh yeah, we went through that," or "Yeah, that happened." And it's kind of like misery loves company. I felt a little better that it wasn't so different for me. And all of them were really helpful for me in giving advice and telling me about things to watch out for. I was warned by Reagan's social Gail Burt that to always plan a backup plan for entertainment, because at some point, sometimes some entertainer will cancel at the last minute, and you have to have a backup. And sure enough, that happened. And so the advice was always good, but Lee and I's friendship was really special, and we felt it with considering the contrasting of administrations, the fact that we had so much in common, it felt the same way about how people should be treated. We kind of wanted the book that we wish we had when we started, because a lot of things we learned was on-the-job training, and it really is, it's common sense steps, but you have to be aware and mindful of them, and you can really make someone's life easier, happier by treating them well, and in response, the way you're usually treated is much better.
Within the book, there are some extraordinary, very, very obviously poignant photographs of both of you in a variety of situations. But the one thing that comes through is you're seeing a very special glimpse behind the scenes, not only of staff, but also the various presidents and the various other officials as real people versus in a more official capacity. That must have been a really extraordinary experience for both of you to learn about these people, again, as human beings versus just the political figures that they were.
It made me have tremendous empathy for the Bushes, because being in the White House is an odd mix of things. You're very isolated by the security, but then you're under constant and intense public scrutiny. And so being comfortable in your own home, and that's relatively small, apartment above the store, is really important that they have their privacy. And we became very protective, and we felt a lot of loyalty to them, because every president and every first family is under a lot of pressure all the time, and they do become somewhat accustomed to it. But even Laura Bush said after she left the White House that it took her about 6 months to really relax and understand how intense the experience had been.
Yeah, I think that we saw them day to day, and they were extraordinary people, but they were people, and they had, like all people, they had good days, bad days, and faults, but overall, they were great people to work for, but we didn't, I didn't go there. I mean, when I was first there, it was always somewhat intimidating when the president walked by, or you were meeting with him or the first lady. I never lost that it was special, but you did get to see them and get to know them as people, joke with them as people, and interact with them as people. Their living it's a nice prison, but it's a prison. I mean, when you're in the White House, you're the president with all that security. There's no longer that freedom to just at the last minute go out and take a stroll or something.
Well, to the both of you, I don't think the timeliness of your title, certainly not lost on me, and I'd like to ask you all, we've all seen this over the last decade, maybe over the last 2 decades. Americans, we've got plenty of enemies, foreign and domestic, but why as Americans, why have we become so rough and mean with one another?
Well, not everything should be political, and when we insist on injecting politics into everything, we make enemies of the people who just simply have a different point of view. And I think as Americans, we need to relearn how to disagree with each other in an agreeable way. And that's what we try to show people how to do very specifically and technically in the book, because there are ways to do it. There are actually things that have been known and done going back to the ancient Greek philosophers, but a lot of us seem to have forgotten them, and there are days when I certainly wish I'd behaved differently than I did, and I'm a little disappointed in myself, but I try to stay mindful, remember some of the things that we put into the book together about being kind so that you get that kind of kindness in response from others. It's so much less stressful.
It is interesting because the two of us started talking about this 2 years ago. So when we completed the book, I expected it to look like War and Peace. We had worked on it for so long. But certainly we had no idea of how. We knew there was going to be an election. We knew it was going to be divisive. We had no idea how strange and how uncivil things would get politically and otherwise. And we actually felt, well, I guess the good thing is that the timing is good because it does take an effort. Bad behavior is contagious, and it takes work to be better to people and aware and take a moment, breathe, and relax before reacting. And I think in this world with social media and immediate gratification, it's especially important to take a moment, step back, and think about how am I treating someone else? Is that way I want to be treated?
And if you just joined us, we're talking to Lea Berman and Jeremy Bernard, co-authors of a brand new work called Treating People Well. Both served in different White Houses in the 2000s as social secretaries and are well aware and wise to the inner workings of the White House, particularly when it comes to the non-political side. A question to both of you. Was this an easy piece to write? And tell us a little bit about the collaboration. Was it done in short order or was it done over a long time and lots of emailing drafts back and forth? Tell us a little bit about the creative process with you two.
Well, Jeremy is a nicer person than I am, and so when we would start to write, I'd write a few pages and I'd send them to him and he'd say, that's a bit pessimistic, or maybe that isn't the best story to tell in that spot. And so between each other, I think we balanced out and found sort of a middle ground that would be nonpartisan so that no one would read this book and say, well, I'm not going to listen to this. What does this Democrat know? Or what does this Republican know? And we really tried to keep it even because we need to do that in life generally now.
I think we were great for it because there would be days we really tried to work every day and turn something in and we'd send back to each other. And some days I'd feel like, God, I had a tough time getting into it. I'm sorry. I got to look this over tomorrow. And Lee would be like, actually, it's good. So it was also kind of having a support system. It helped a lot because but this is for both of us, another new venture. I mean, I never really thought I'd be writing a book. And so this was something new to both of us. We knew it was going to be a lot of work. It was more work than we thought, even knowing that. Someone said, are you friends with your co-writer? I said, yes. And they said, are you still friends now that the book's done? I said, yes. They said, then that's a success. But we had a great time sharing stories, and it was a lot of work, but well worth it.
What about, as you look back on those, is there anything, first of all, I get the strong impression that you would both do it all over again. What advice, and again, forget who's ever in holding your position right now with the current administration, for a future social secretary, is there one particular word of advice or mantra that they must live by to be successful, do you think?
I think forbearance is a good idea because when people come to the White House, they have a lot of excitement, understandably, and it's kind of a volatile atmosphere, and they sometimes behave in ways that they would never behave in another environment. And so you have to be prepared for that and be prepared to calm and soothe and deflect and diffuse. And we write a lot about how we did those things For example, it was not uncommon for someone to come to a dinner at the White House and realize that they weren't seated at the president's table and come to me or to Jeremy and complain bitterly about it. And, we would just laugh and say, oh, my goodness, there are no bad seats in the White House State Dining Room. And those kinds of refusals to engage in conflict really helped us to be better at our jobs. And what we wanted to do, first and foremost, was nothing that would ever embarrass our president and first lady.
Yeah, and just building on that, I think that, we also kept reminding my staff, even if we had 3-4 events that day, or it was day after a state visit and everyone was that for the guests that are coming in, this is special. This is, for many of them, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity or experience. So you've got to keep the outlook of, I want them to feel welcomed. I want guests to feel welcomed. And the most important thing, I would say, is always it takes a lot to get into the White House. You have to give your social security number, your birth date, a lot of things that some people feel are not generally, or it didn't at least used to be, so happy about giving out. By the time you get through all that, you go through the Secret Service and they check to make sure you're not bringing something you shouldn't be bringing in. You want to make sure that those guests feel special because it took a lot to get them there. And that's the thing. I think one of the takeaways from our book is treat people well, make them feel welcome. It's probably the most important thing. It'll make you feel better. It'll probably make you more successful, too.
Well, again, as we start to wind down here, the work is called Treating People Well, an extraordinary collaboration between Lea Berman and Jeremy Bernard, both social secretaries to two different presidents. In the 2000s, the subtitle, The Extraordinary Power of Civility at Work and in Life. I suppose, easy question is, who plays you guys in a movie?
I don't know what the biggest male star is. Is it Nick Jonas or someone like? It'd have to be someone like that. Someone that is actually much younger than I was, because with Hollywood, you got to make it a little bit more sexier and timely.
Lee, how about you?
Well, that's the first time anyone's asked us that, and I never gave that a thought as a possibility. I'm going to have to get back to you on that.
Yeah, this has got big screen written all over it. No question about it.
God bless you. From your words to up above.
Now, the last question I have for you all obviously had a good time, or a reasonably good time. I will call it a net good time putting this thing together. Any reason should we be looking for another work from you too?
Well, I think we have to see how this one does, but I certainly wouldn't be averse to it.
It was challenging at times. It was a lot of work, but I really overall enjoyed it, and I would jump at the chance to do it again.
Have the people that you served, have they read it?
I know that Mrs. Bush did, because she wrote the foreword.
Right, she wrote the foreword, right.
Believe the Obamas have, but I will find out more. I just got into D.C. I'm going to find out in the next few days.
Well, we very much appreciate both of you spending some time with us today. Again, Lea Berman and Jeremy Bernard, both former social secretaries, amongst other things. They've done, again, Lee currently has a blog called America's Table, and Jeremy is the founder and president of JMB Global, a strategic consulting company in Los Angeles. The work, again, is Treating People Well, the Extraordinary Power of Civility at Work and in Life. I think we probably know the answer, but Lee, Jeremy, how can people get a copy?
They can go to our treatingpeoplewellbook.com website, or pretty much any bookstore. I think we have good coverage.
Amazon and Barnes & Noble both have them and are selling them very well, so don't miss out.
Great. Listen, again, thank you all so much. Whether you collaborate again or not, would love to have both of you or either one of you back on again to share some more thoughts with us.
Well, thank you so much.
Love that.
Great to speak with you.
You bet.
Thank you so much.
You bet.
Take care.
We will be back with more right after this on Lewis at Large.
This is Katie Terry with Call of Duty Pet Waste Removal. You're at work, running errands, or away on business. Well, your dog does their business too, most times in your yard. For quick, expert cleanup of those special presents your dog left behind, call Call of Duty, 764-7224. We do all of the cleanup for you on a one-time or on an ongoing basis. So when your dog does their business in your yard, call our business, Call of Duty, 764-7224, or visit our website, callofdutypetwasteremoval.com.